When you think of the rogue throughout Classic, it's like that TV show that you've seen 100 times but you're always happy to watch it again. It's familiar, it never lets you down, and it's always a pleasure to spend some time with. Since day one of Classic, or even if you want to go back as far as Vanilla in 2004, rogues have always been a solid choice. A good rogue will always get a raid spot. Damage-wise, there's been ups and downs, but ultimately, the down has never been low enough to worry about too much. Is that all going to change in Cataclysm? Does any of the free specs change so much that they're no longer familiar, or is it simply a new series that's coming out of that TV show that's never let you down? Let's find out as we look at my own top 10 changes coming to rogues in Cataclysm. Number 1 would have to be Blade Flurry. You learn Blade Flurry now as early as level 10, so as soon as you unlock your talent specializations, it's the main ability that you're going to get should you choose combat. Blade Flurry has always been a staple ability for the combat rogue since the start, but you've never ever seen it like this. I personally have always preferred assassination to combat, but honestly, I can't get enough of combat rogue in Cata, and I really think a big part of it comes down to this one ability. Blade Flurry now is simply toggled on or toggled off with a 10-second cooldown, and while active, the rogue's attacks strike an additional nearby opponent, but energy regen is reduced by 30%. It may only say 15% on screen, but that is actually thanks to a major glyph, which is Glyph of Blade Flurry, which reduces the penalty to the energy regen while Blade Flurry is active by 50%. So it should be 30% penalty to energy regen, but it's only 15% with a glyph. I'll be honest with you, the penalty for it being on isn't even that big of a deal. I can barely notice the difference the vast majority of the time. But the fact that you can just be pumping away single target on a boss, and as soon as you see something else that comes into your hitbox, being able to just toggle Blade Flurry on and watch the big numbers spam your screen is really, really satisfying. Even though it is a small penalty, being only 15% with it being glyphed, as in the penalty to your energy regen, of course you don't want to keep it on all the time, so when that ad is moved out of range or dies, of course you want to turn it straight back off, but you're only going to have 10 seconds before you can put it on again. Like I've said, I do love this change, and it's one of my favourite things about playing a combat rogue in Cataclysm. It's just really, really strong. When there's 2 targets, or even 3 targets, whatever, and you're just cleaving away, when one dies, you're still cleaving on 2, the longer you can have an extra target to hit, it's beautiful. Like, so much damage to the point where I thought it was quite broken when I first started playing with it. Everyone's cleave and AoE is improved in Cata anyway, so it's not like you're the only person that can hit 2 targets reliably, but Blade Flurry is definitely probably one of my favourites. I'm pretty sure the devs during Cata was all combat rogue mains, just to let this get in the game. Next up at number 2 is really like a 2A and a 2B, because it's both being able to put poisons on your throwing weapon and Fan of Knives. So like you can see on my Dragon Wreck throwing axe, I've got wound poison on. It's quite important to note that Fan of Knives is purely off of your thrown weapon damage now. So the tooltip reads, instantly whirl around, releasing a spray of throwing knives at all targets within 8 yards, causing 140% of thrown weapon damage. That 8 yards can be increased by 50% with Glyph of Fan of Knives, which is only a major glyph, so it's not going to be taking up one of your big prime glyphs. But the bad thing is, Fan of Knives in terms of trying to do damage is pretty poor. In terms of, like, if there was 20 mobs, then of course you want a Fan of Knives, but there needs to be quite a lot of mobs for it to be even worth using. But where currently in Wrath you might use a gun or a bow as your bis, you have to have a throwing weapon equipped to be able to use both Fan of Knives and Deadly Throw. So you'll rarely see a rogue not having a throwing weapon equipped anymore. But like I said, the good thing is you can put poison on your throwing weapon now. So for me, for example, as combat with instant on the main hand, deadly on the offhand, and then being able to have wound as well, on a fight like a noob, for example, where you might want to keep wound up on the boss, you could just weave in a Fan of Knives, even though it's not going to do much damage, but know you're going to be able to keep wound poison up on the boss. Obviously, you could use crippling on it or whatever you want on it, really, but it's pretty cool. And it's actually one of those changes that I completely forgot about. I literally leveled all the way to 85 and had already started doing heroics before Stark on stream asked when the change came in, because he noticed I didn't have poison on my throwing weapon. Cheers, Stark, and everybody else. Stream on kick.com/Scottejaye, link in the description. Coming in at number 3, I just really want to talk about the initial abilities that you get. So it doesn't matter whether you want to go assassination, or you want to go combat, or you want to go subtlety. Just look at the power that you're going to gain as soon as you hit level 10. you're going to get Mutilate instantly, or you're going to get Blade Flurry, which makes leveling an absolute dream because you can just run around cleaving everything, and you get Shadow Step, which makes low-level battlegrounds absolutely mind-blowing. Now, not every class is quite as lucky as a rogue is. I believe all of these three abilities to be so overpowered at level 10 that it just makes rogue so much fun to level. Like, being able to get Shadow Step at level 10 is just immense, and I gotta be honest, combat is great for leveling, but sub at low level is just so much fun. Just Shadow Step, ambush, dead. Shadow Step, ambush, dead. Really good. That was a quick one, but moving on to number 4. Now, we've already touched on it slightly about putting poison on your throwing weapon, but I just want to talk about the poison change in general when it comes to Cataclysm. Ordinarily, up until now, you don't get poisons until level 20, but now you're actually going to get them from level 10. Aside from the fact that you can put poison on your throwing weapon, also anesthetic poison has been removed completely. And the reason this is relevant ties into your other ability, which rarely probably gets used, which is Shiv, which strikes an enemy pressure point with your offhand weapon, guaranteeing poison application from that weapon and dispelling an enrage effect. Now, I know some of you super pro rogues will probably Shiv to stop poisons falling off and stuff like that, but I gotta admit, it's one that I don't use very often. But then I don't claim to be a pro rogue. But the fact is, anesthetic poison's gone completely, but you've just got a way to always be able to remove enrages. So you can remove enrage with Shiv, you can keep wound on a throwing weapon, you can have 2 other poisons on your main hand and offhand. You just got so much utility. And poisons also now have no rank. So if you look at the poisons in my bag, at level 10 you can get instant poison, at level 30 you can get deadly poison, at level 20 you've got crippling poison, and at level 32 you've got wound poison. But all of these just scale. So there is no instant poison rank 1 or instant poison rank 10. You just buy a few stacks of them and you've got them once. And as you level up, the damage of the poisons will level up with you as well. So scaling poisons. Pretty cool. They also added a minor glyph, which is Glyph of Poisons, which allows you to apply poisons to your weapon 50% faster. Now, I know that's not a big deal, but it is to do with poison, so I thought it was worth mentioning in this section. And just in case you wondered, Glyph of Crippling Poison still exists as well. And then in at number 5 is another new ability that comes from talents, and it is for combat, and it's Revealing Strike. Whilst it's not the most fun ability for rogues that you can think of, it does make decision making as combat a little bit more important. Because of the way Glyph of Sinister Strike works, where it just gives you a flat 20% chance to add an additional combo point. If you're on 4 combo points, you'll always want to be using a Revealing Strike to get your 5th combo point before you then do a nice big Eviscerate. The reason for this is what Revealing Strike does is it's an instant strike that causes 125% of your weapon damage and increases the effectiveness of your next offensive finishing move on that target by 35%. So you get to 4 combo points, you use Revealing Strike to get your 5th, and then you've got a nice big 35% buff to your next Eviscerate that you're going to use. And while it seems like a bit of a boring ability, seeing them big Eviscerates, you know the difference between a crit Eviscerate with or without Revealing Strike. But if you was on 3 combo points and you got lucky or unlucky, depending how you look at it, and your Sinister Strike glyph proc, so you're now at 5 combo points, most of the time you're going to Eviscerate without using Revealing Strike. Losing that combo point from Revealing Strike and the 40 energy before you can then Eviscerate again is going to be a DPS loss, so old Sims would say. But we'll see how that plays out in Classic. But just the addition of this one ability really makes the rotation less dull, because you're constantly spending your time trying to make sure that that 5th combo point as often as possible is your new ability, Revealing Strike. Unfortunately, due to how deep it is in the combat tree, there is no way that any other spec can make use of this, so it is purely combat only. Coming in at number 6, and one of my very close second favourites to Blade Flurry, is Redirect. You know as well as I do that when you're DPSing an ad and you've got like 4 combo points on it, or even 5, and then you've got to move back onto the boss because it's just died, losing those combo points or just sinking them into a refresh of Slice and Dice or something like that feels pretty bad. Well, now once a minute you can transfer any existing combo points to the current enemy target, as well as any insight gained from Bandit's Guile. It does require active combo points to do, and the reason for that is all around Bandit's Guile, which I'll explain now. Deep in the combat tree before you get Killing Spree, you're going to get Bandit's Guile, which you put 3 points in, and then your Sinister Strike and Revealing Strike abilities have a 100% chance to grant you an evolving insight into an opponent's defenses, increasing damage to that target by up to 30%. A Opponents can adapt over time, negating this effect, and striking a different opponent will begin the cycle anew. So basically you've got 3 levels of insight. You've got green, yellow, and you've got red. The green is just shallow insight, which grants you a 10% additional damage to that target, and as you continue to sinister strike and revealing strike into the target, you'll get 20% at moderate insight, and then finally you'll get deep insight, which is a big one, which is 30% damage. Now at this point, if you've got a switch target, you wouldn't want to lose it, so instead you can redirect the combo points and keep your insight on the target that you're attacking now. This makes target switching a lot less punishing, specifically as combat, because combat you've got that big ramp up time to get to that red insight level, and when you get that and then you've got to switch instantly and you're losing that sort of 10-15 seconds of 30% extra damage, you really do feel it. So whilst redirect is amazing for all 3 specs, the fact that you can carry over the insight from Bandit's Guile as well is absolutely amazing. But like it says, you have to have active combo points. So if I've got 0 combo points on this target dummy and I move on to the other one, I can't actually redirect. So you can't just transfer the insight, you have to have at least 1 combo point on the target as well to take over, which can be really frustrating if something dies from your eviscerate, let's say, while you've got even moderate insight up. You know, it ain't even got to be the big one, it's not got to be deep insight, but let's say you've got the yellow version of insight on, you've eviscerated a target that's then died, but because that's then used all your combo points, you can't redirect the insight onto your new target. So you do have to be a bit careful. But it doesn't matter which of the 3 specs you play, even though you get slightly more benefit out of it by being combat, it's still amazing to be able to once a minute chuck all your combo points onto a new target. Coming in at number 7 is Smoke Bomb. Not to be confused with the Smoke Bomb of later expansion where it gives a damage reduction for everyone stood in it. That didn't actually happen until 5.2 in Mr. Pandaria. So first, what does it do and why is it even useful in PvE in its current state? So Smoke Bomb creates a cloud of thick smoke in an 8-yard radius around the rogue for 5 seconds. Enemies are unable to target into or out of the smoke cloud. So you can probably guess what it would be good for. But to quote the Blizzard devs back in original Cata, the rogue drops a Smoke Bomb creating a cloud that interferes with enemy targeting. In PvP, this will open up new dimensions of tactical positional gameplay, which it absolutely does, as the ability offers a variety of offensive and defensive uses. In PvE, Smoke Cloud can serve to shield your group from hostile range attacks, while also drawing enemies closer without the need to rely on conventional line of sight obstructions. So if you imagine you was in a raid or a dungeon and there's casters shooting at your tank, you can run over and drop Smoke Bomb on your tank, which you're probably going to be stood with them hitting something anyway, and it will pull everything in, or they'll at least run for the duration that it's up for, which is like 5 seconds. I actually think in Classic we'll see some really clever uses of Smoke Bomb just because of how unique the ability is. It's worth noting that AoE works in and out of the Smoke Bomb. It is only single target, so if there was AoE raid damage going on, you can't just stand in it and be immune. It has to be single target directed attacks. Coming in at number 8, and a real quick one, rogues now have a heal. What? No, they actually do. Recuperate. So Recuperate's a finishing move that consumes combo points on any nearby target to restore 4% max health every 3 seconds. So the more combo points, the longer it stays up for. Now, this is absolutely amazing when you're just out maybe grinding for rep or for gold, or when you're leveling. Obviously, it's particularly strong. But having a way just to constantly regen health with no cooldown, so you can have 100% uptime on it, is absolutely phenomenal. And whilst it might seem like quite an insignificant amount, only being 4%, you can see in my gear at the moment, when I've got it on, it's 4.3k a tick. And ticking every 3 seconds, it can really just save you in a raid. It can save you in a dungeon. But there's more. Recuperate for sub-rogues is absolutely amazing. So you get a talent called Energetic Recovery, where it empowers your Recuperate ability, which is your heal, causing its periodic effect to also restore 12 energy. So now not only am I going to be healing for about 4k every 3 seconds, I'm getting 12 energy at the same time, which I'll just demonstrate now, and you can see just how powerful it is every time it ticks. Every time you see the heal tick here, you'll see the energy jump up as well. It's absolutely bonkers. And as raiding, as a sub-rogue, you want 100% uptime on it. So not only are you healing yourself constantly, you're getting that energy, and right now you're sat there like, sub-rogue, raiding. Yeah, good one, mate. Wait till we get to the last point, and you'll be quite surprised by sub's performance. But overall, it's great just to be able to have some form of self-healing no matter what spec you play. But as I say, a little bit like Redirect for combat gets a lot more benefit because of Insight. Sub-rogue gets a lot more benefit from Recuperate, thanks to energy energetic recovery. Coming in at number 9, and a real quick one, is just stealth, and the way stealth has actually changed in cata, because it's quite significant, and I believe significant enough to talk about. Currently in Wrath of the Lich King, stealth's got a 10-second cooldown, and when you go into stealth, you move 30% slower. This can be increased by talents, but you'll still be moving slower than you would ordinarily. Well, in Wrath now, it's only got a 6-second cooldown. That's without talents. You can bring this down to a 2-second cooldown, but it has no speed penalty at all. So you'll move the same speed out of stealth as you would in stealth. In fact, you can actually move faster in stealth than out of stealth if you was to take Night Stalker, which increases your speed while stealth by 10%, and it's the one that reduces the cooldown, so it brings it down to 2 seconds if you put 2 points in it. So actually, as a sub-rogue, you can move faster stealthed than you can ordinarily out of stealth. Nothing more to say there, it's just really cool. It's amazing that you can just always be in stealth, like as a sub-rogue or an assassination rogue or whatever, when you're moving into a fight, and know you're at no disadvantage. You know, you're going to move just as quick, if not quicker, than everybody else if you was stealthed with the talent. Pretty cool. And finally, whilst it's not a specific change that actually allows this to happen, it's a combination of everything. You really can play what you like. Whether you want to be an assassination rogue and pump single target with a fairly easy rotation, or you want to be a cleave machine that revolves all around using your cooldowns properly and be a combat rogue, or you want to be sub, which has arguably got the hardest rotation out of all of them, and you're spinning a lot of plates, having to keep up recuperate, slice and dice, utilising the extra combo points from Honour Among Thieves, using Shadow Dance when you know you can get maximum amounts of ambushes out. There's a lot going on with sub, which is a reason you don't see that many people playing it, but it is actually extremely competitive. In fact, using a 4.3 version of Simcraft, I was running sims on Fireland's Bisc gear for all 3 specs, and these were the results. With sub in full Bisc getting 39.3k, combat getting 39.3k, and assassination getting 38.8k, so assassination was a little bit behind, and sub was a tiny bit in front, but they're all so close that ultimately you can play whichever one you're most comfortable with, and whichever playstyle suits you. And whilst, as I say, this is a combination of many things that brought these specs so close together, but the fact that sub in cata is actually a competitive DPS spec, albeit a very difficult one, is absolutely amazing. And just because there was one thing that got left out, I'm going to give you a bonus one. So there's 11. And coming in at number 11, which is actually not very interesting at all to me personally, but combat readiness. So you actually get another defensive cooldown. And the reason for this being added in, as Blizzard said back in the day, was so you could stand toe-to-toe with other melee for small portions of the fight without the need of evasion. So of course you would use evasion, but normally if you're going toe-to-toe with a warrior, or you're going toe-to-toe with a DK or whatever, once your evasion's down, you're pretty much a walking dead man. Well, now, with combat readiness, you enter into a state of heightened awareness, deflecting enemy weapon strikes with increasing effectiveness. Successful attacks will deal 10% less damage per application, stacking 5 times, and it lasts 20 seconds. But if 10 seconds elapse without an incoming weapon strike, this state will end. But ultimately, you can start taking 50% less damage when you're toe-to-toe in melee. This has also got usefulness in PvE, although not as much usefulness in PvE. But if for some reason you've got an ad hitting you and the tank's miles away, or one tank's dead, the other tank's tanking a boss, and you've got an ad on you, you can pop evasion. If that don't last long enough, you can then go into combat readiness. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong with this ability whatsoever, but I just feel like it's a little bit boring in comparison to everything else we spoke about today, so I thought I'd just throw it in as a bonus. And they're my top 10 changes when it comes to Cataclysm for rogues, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.